Is it really hot?
No, it's not hot, but it's LED. But it just washes everything out. I mean, it's better than not having anything, but it's not good. And like we try to reflect it against shit, and
That's the thing. It's like, especially with the podcast, like you definitely have to have multiple lights.
Yeah.
They do have the ones that you can hang from your ceiling. Like if I don't know how tall it is, or I don't know what they have in there. If you hang from the ceiling, they have it. It's like it basically shoots light out of 360.
Yeah,
what that causes is light to come naturally.
No, it's not like that.
But those are like fucking like $1,000, $2,000. Absolutely absurd.
That's out of the price range for what we're trying to do, dude. It's blue. What do you think about that? What do you think about that?
I think I have a really good fridge for beer.
You have a great fridge. This might even be like a small freezer or a very terrible freezer.
My fridge is so good, it's considered a terrible freezer.
That's not a problem. I think that's a win.
Exactly
that's a win.
That's a beer fridge.
That's a beer fridge.
Of course, I have a sparkling mineral water and Gatorade filled in there. And leftover Rocky Mountains.
Dude, the Rockies. It's a golden Colorado.
I haven't upgraded to the Yellow Bellies yet.
No, it's a good call.
I'm not classy enough for that yet.
No, that's too aggressive for a podcast. You don't want things getting out of hand right away.
Because I go from Coors Light to straight up Scotch.
Yeah,
there's no in between there.
No, there isn't an in between. Because I mean, when you move to the Scotch, you know where the night's going. There's like no.
This is the episode picture I'm taking right now.
One sec. Man, is that Coors? Sponsor me.
You sound like Eric Andre. Beautiful. You look so great. Well, welcome to the Studio Corner podcast.
Is this the corner of your studio? No way. I didn't notice.
Always a pleasure, Matt.
Always a pleasure.
Anybody listening that doesn't know my relationship with Matt is my oldest friend.
Yeah, same here.
Since first grade.
God,
were we even friends in first grade?
Yeah. We were. I mean, like as far as like first grade friends go, like we played tag and kickball and just tetherball, and then like we were
scraped our knees.
Yeah, the tortures of the Pinecrest playground. That asphalt that was just like you fell and like, all right, I'm cut up for the rest of the week.
I guarantee if like any school had that asphalt right now in 2019, like 10 parents would sue.
No, 100%.
And
here's the bigger problem, right? Our parents were like, oh, it's cool. Like our kids could play out there. Like no worries.
Coming
like,
home
fuck
with
off.
Like deep gashes in your knee every day.
And it was a private school too. It wasn't like it was. Yeah, it was. I mean, private as in like. You know,
I guess we had uniforms, right?
It was like low end private. Yeah. I wouldn't say it's like high end private by any means.
It was like Coors Banquet. It's trying to be up there with the big cats, but it's still Coors.
I wouldn't compare it to Coors. I would compare it to like Keystone. Like the Keystone of private schools.
Keystone of private schools.
You just be like, hey, like you can say you go to a private school. Don't say what school it is. Just say, hey, I go to a private school. That's about it.
Damn, Can you imagine if there was an elementary school that was like run by a beer company?
That's a great school.
You know what I mean? Because like it's beer companies have so much money, right?
Yeah.
Like, what if one day like the guy or girl running the place
aren't most beer companies owned by like soft drink companies? Like, isn't like Coke?
I have no idea.
I don't know either, but I feel like the beverage world is like owned by like either Coke or Pepsi.
Like what if you went to a football game, a high school football game, and it was like the Coors Light against the Cokes?
Dude, that'd be a great game.
And there's just two mascots.
I would fully support that game.
Oh yeah. Because it's like you can't serve Coors at the game, but it's the Coors Light High School.
You have like the obese kids on the Coke side, and then you just have the raging alcoholic parents on like the Coors side. Like,
yeah, like what kind of parent would you have to be to send your kid to Coors Light High School?
It would. I mean, I would do whatever it took to get my kid into that school.
I don't care about your future, Billy. Yeah. All right, this is what I'm going to tell my friends.
Billy, you need this, and by you need this. I need this.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
And let's be real here. That's like most parents that send their kids to most football parents. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, we need to send like little Timmy here to school because he's a 5-star athlete. He runs a 4.2 and he's like 16. Anyways, yeah. No.
God.
But yeah, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah. We went to that school.
We went to that school.
I try not to tell people what high school I went to just because like I tell them that high school I went to and they're like, oh, And then I say, but I was like a troublemaker.
And you
so
say,
did you ever get expelled or suspended? I was like, no, I just minded my own business.
Well, usually I make up like, it's not an excuse, but I'm like, well, I hung out with like these people. Like I hung out with the people that weren't total D-bags that like came from a shit ton of money and were spoiled. It was like, I actually hung out with people that were like legitimate human beings, not like super
security
shallow.
guards.
Dude,
that was my play, man.
I love those dudes, especially I forgot his name. Gary in the hot sauce. Yeah, he tricked all of us that day, and it wasn't good. Yeah,
that was my play. I made friends with the security guards so I could leave whenever I wanted. I would text them and they would sign me out.
That was a power move. It really was. It really was. You're like, hey, I know it's not like an extended lunch and I have like 5 classes later, but
I'm leaving.
Let me sign this paper. And he's like, yo, go for it.
Gosh, sure, you're great, man.
Yeah.
Well, Matt, welcome to the podcast. I am very excited to have a fellow podcaster on the show.
Hey, I appreciate it.
And this is a spontaneous episode.
It really was.
Usually I like reach out and I put a lot of like, planning this and that. And after hanging out at the brewery last night, you just talking about your podcast, I was like, oh my God. Not only do I need this information and I want to hear this, but I was like, what better place to bring this information than a creative place, but also how many people
I completely lack, but I appreciate it.
Well, that's the thing. It's like podcasting in itself has such a heavy creative side that people forget about.
Yeah.
You can't just plug into a computer, get a microphone, and just talk about nothing.
No.
You can, but no one's going to fucking listen.
No one cares about that, yeah.
So there's this whole side, and you have a very successful podcast.
Yeah.
So give me the general...
in theory.
Well, give me the general idea, like what it's called, what it is, and...
Okay, so the name of the podcast is the Permian Basin Experience. So just to give a little backstory on myself for the people who don't know me, I'm a rock person. I'm a geologist. I moved to Midland, Texas, which is considered the heart of oil and gas in the United States. And Midland actually, or the Permian Basin itself, has actually surpassed Saudi Arabia in oil production. We're the leading producer of oil and gas in the world.
So Permian Basin is a location? I have no idea what that means.
So it's more or less just an area. It's southeast New Mexico, West Texas. It's this... I'm going to say, to explain to someone that doesn't understand geology, it's a massive bowl that was filled up with sediment, and that sediment now contains a large amount of oil and gas, right? And due to the fracking revolution and all of that, now it's popped off. So all of a sudden, it was this area that was condemned, right? It's like, we know there's oil there. It's not great, but with innovations in technology, people have been able to exploit it. And in this time frame, old ideas were used in order to exploit this oil and gas resource. And we felt that there was, so me and my mentor and my best friend, his name is Troy Tittlemeyer. He's he's actually the host of the podcast. I'm the co-host. So I say like 2-3 words every episode. He does the majority of the talking. But for the most part, what we noticed was that we're using these older ideas in order to leverage new technology and these new ways of exploring for oil and gas. And these old ideas just don't work, right?
Okay.
I mean, there's things that you can plug in, but it was more or less like, okay, like we have a couple of correlations we can make, but, let's disregard these things that don't fit into our model, right? Okay. And we're like, whoa. Just because you're disregarding this, right, doesn't mean it's not valid.
Yeah.
So the idea of the podcast kind of sprung from that. Like being in Midland, you're surrounded by a shit ton of other like geotechnical professionals, right? Other professional geophysicists, geologists that work for these huge
like the
major
epicenter of that industry.
Yeah, because that's like all you can really hang out with there too. That's the other thing. And so we all have like barbecues on the weekend and shit. We get drunk, and like this just kind of stemmed from that. We're like, hey, like the best ideas come from us just kind of bullshitting. Like, why not do this podcast? Ooh. And like, there's this like kind of gap in the industry, right? Because there's like oil and gas podcasts that deal with like the economics and like the engineering side, but there was nothing that really like leveraged the technical side.
Almost like the science behind it.
Yeah, the science behind it. And we're like, hey, we're assholes. We can do that. Like, we know a little bit. And so that's where it kind of stemmed from. And we started this podcast just kind of, similar to, I'm sure, how you started yours. It was just kind of like, we have this idea, we have this vision, right? And we want to like develop intellectual conversations, right? We want people to start thinking. We don't want to just be bullshit that you listen to every day.
Yeah.
But we had a very specific audience for it, right? And that's what we wanted to leverage. So for us, it wasn't, Instagram, Facebook, because for us we're like 50-year-old dudes who like oh, I got a LinkedIn, so that's where that's where we leverage primarily.
So you guys are like the young kids of this industry, basically.
Yeah. So we're the young guns, and that was another big issue with oil and gas too. Is there's this thing called the Great Gap. And it sounds super fucking gay.
That sounds so sexual.
It sounds so sexual. And it kind of is, because everything in geology is sexual.
Was it the Great Gap?
Yeah, the Great Gap or the Great Divide.
I call it the gap. The image in my head is very different from the image in your head right now.
It should be.
I think mine's better.
And I hope everyone listening thinks so as well. But, I mean, the big issue was we have these professionals that are 70, 60, 50 years old, and then we have this gap, and then the rest of the professionals are 20, 30, 35, right? So we have this space of innovation that was just lost, right? So a lot of young professionals just listen to what these older dudes say, right, who have been doing this for 40, 50 years, have been doing the same thing for 40, 50 years. And then there's some of us who are just like, that shit don't work. Like, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, there's so much more to do.
Yeah, there's so much more to do.
So the podcast platform, I guess, made sense because it's literally allows you, it's like barbecue but recording.
Exactly. That's
so
what
was it about, like, about the conversations that, like, struck, because you could do a million things. You could start, like, a show where it's purely one person interviews another person, because when you try to describe podcasting, especially to your older crowd, like, the amount of times I've tried to describe what a podcast is to someone over the age of, like, 50 is a fucking nightmare.
Google? What?
Well, that's the thing. It's like and it's not their fault. It's a brand new idea.
No,
it's
is.
This hip thing that everyone's doing. I mean, I'm freaking doing it. You're doing it.
Yeah.
And you try to tell them, like, oh, it's like you're interviewing people. I'm like, yeah, it's like very much, but it's also like it's not. You just sit down and you talk. But who wants to listen to that? It's like I don't know how to describe it. So for you had to it was a bigger leap to jump into podcasting instead of just saying, hey, we started a show where we choose a topic for the day and we talk about this and we interview one person, because that would make sense to them.
Yeah.
But and that could definitely identify with what you're doing.
Exactly.
But it's still a podcast. Like, how did you describe to your guests that were over the age of 50 that have been in one of the most successful industries ever? This is what we're doing.
So it's still rough. It's so rough. It's so rough. But that was our biggest issue to get over initially, right? Was to make it as easily accessible as possible, right? Through every single platform we can imagine, but most importantly, how can we get it so we can get these the elder generation to just be like, click, listen, right?
Yeah.
That's what we wanted. And we wanted it to be something that would grab their attention right away. And just from that point, they would continue on. But here's the best part. Most of those older professionals are like most hardcore listeners. Like, those are the people that listen to every single one of our podcasts. But it was just getting them to the platform, which was the issue, right?
That's interesting. So how did you, because I can post on Instagram, I can tell people I have a podcast, go on Spotify, Apple Music, all this stuff. But how do you get that crowd to the podcast?
So for us, and this was kind of the blessing of being in Midland, was the networking opportunities, right? So every week there's a luncheon from like a specific society, whether it's geophysicists, geologists, petrophysicists, whatever. And every other week after that, there's like a symposium, like a really big symposium that's like international. So that was something that Troy and I and Perry, our Indian correspondent, we tried to leverage the best we could. We would go out and we'd talk to, first and foremost, everyone we knew immediately, right?
Yeah.
In order to get this out there and have them leverage it as well, especially our close friends. And then from there, at all these conferences, being like, hey, take this card, take this card, take this card. And it actually evolved to the point, and I'm kind of skipping ahead a little bit.
You're fine.
But we went from solely the platform, like similar to you, where we would just be doing these shows like in a studio and then publishing them online, to actually doing them live at these conferences. And that was actually where we made our biggest step. Right.
Interesting.
So we were paid by a company to come out and actually run our podcast through their booth, and we would just do it live, and we'd bring on guests, and like we do them during happy hours. So we do them strategically when everyone's in the convention floor. And so once everyone's in the floor, we just, all these two young dudes bringing energy to the floor and then asking these people like very, very interesting questions, right? Really thought-provoking questions.
So walk me through this setup. Like, you were sitting down at a table. How did you get people to sit down in the middle of an entire convention?
So this is actually, I'll shout out the company. Icon was the first company to let us do this. They're a software provider, and we actually planned for the guests beforehand. So we said, hey, would you be interested in doing the show live at the Icon booth during this time, and they'd be like,
so you scheduled it.
Yeah, we scheduled it. So yeah, that's what we did behind the scenes, and we made sure that we had a couple interesting name grabs. We had a couple that were rough. I'll even admit that, but for the most part, it was just something that was different. Right? Because that whole crowd is older, right? They're used to like going to a booth and seeing like, oh, look, a free pen, a pamphlet. Cool. I'm on to the next one.
One of those lanyards.
Yeah, one of those fucking lanyards. But no, like no shit. That's what it was. And then all of a sudden you have these like young dudes who are just like talking about, even though we're just kind of riffing off the top of our head, but we're trying to ask questions to poke holes in people's theories, and all of a sudden, people from the audience are joining in, like, "Whoa, you're wrong, you screwed up," and that's exactly what we wanted.
While the show's going on.
Yeah, while the show is going on, and then that's how we bridge that gap to the older generation, and we're still bridging that gap. I'm not saying we're there.
So your networking idea, I mean, and maybe this only works for the older generation, but I think it works best for regardless of the age group. It was very much word of mouth. It was like, hey, this is what we're doing, tell your friend, and then tell your friend.
100%.
It just happened to speed up because of where you were and how
100%.
Everyone there was a fucking
yeah
show.
I mean, obviously leveraging social media is a key component, right? Because you want people to be able to continue to come back and continue to like be a part of what be a part of what we're doing. But at the end of the day, word of mouth is like, it's key, right? Because you're telling your buddy like, hey, are you listening to this podcast? Then they're gonna go listen to it.
Yeah, they trust it a lot more.
Because even on LinkedIn, right, or Facebook or anything, you're going through your feed. How much BS is on that feed that you just scroll past?
Oh my God, yeah.
So much, right? Yeah. So it's the same thing where it's like, okay, like I can look at analytics here and there, but how many people that are actually viewing this post are actually, engaging in the podcast? It's a very big discrepancy. Yeah. But yeah, so word of mouth, without a doubt, is like the most important factor, I think, into what we were doing.
So do you think if you had a younger crowd, would you be doing things differently?
I definitely think the younger crowd are the ones that are more engaged in social media. Yeah, 100%. But yeah, I definitely think that would be a bigger factor because generally like we when we run our analytics, right, it's through, whatever platform we're on. And there's a very general description, and like exactly what I'm talking about, right? Like an age group or blah 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 blah. But the younger generation definitely seems to be more engaged, right? The ones that look at the posts are definitely the ones that click on the videos, opposed to the older people. But yeah, I definitely think we would leverage the platform differently if it was a younger generation. I think we'd be hitting Instagram a lot harder, Facebook a lot harder, and I definitely think the way we network would be way different.
So the intention, I guess, from what you said earlier, is the idea of bringing on these the people that are successful in this industry, bringing them on and hearing their ways, their opinions, and like you said, poking holes in it to engage a conversation that might discover something new. Yeah. So you guys, at the end of the day, you're looking to start...
Or just ask questions that are thought-provoking, right? Yeah.
Yeah, just inspire maybe some sort of creative new solution to something we've always done that might bring
100%.
a lot more.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I think it's really cool. I think it's fucking really, really cool that you guys are doing that, because how often do you hear someone going over and like trying to rip apart something that's so set in place to inspire something great for everyone? Yeah. And people talk about that, but to actually do it, especially in the way you guys are doing it, take a platform that they're not used to, sit them down with young people that they're probably not going to respect just off looks, you young guys as opposed to these guys that are like, you saw
the photo I sent you, fucking Hawaiian shirt, porn stash, right?
Yeah, like, I'm going to post that. I'm not going to use it as the episode image just because I don't have the heart to put you out like that.
It's okay, dude. It's on our website. Like if you come to our website, that's like the first thing you see.
If you're listening to this, please go to the Instagram of the Studio Corner podcast and look at the post with Matt. It's episode number 43. There'll be an episode image. Please swipe right because I will be posting it. That's the real Matt, everybody.
It's beauty incarnate.
Stop, press pause right now and go look at that picture. It's fucking beautiful. I mean, I get a lot of weird pictures because I send like, hey, I need you to send me a badass picture of yourself. It's going to be used as the episode image. And I tell all my guests that. And some of the pictures I get, you'd be amazed. You'd be freaking amazed. And you can tell like people come on, if the episode is ever me taking like a selfie with someone, it means I didn't like their photo. I'm like, I don't think I can put that up. Like it's just not going to fit the criteria.
Yeah, I got you. But
I got one that was just like a close up, like an angle selfie that's just like the phone is probably inches from his nose. And I'm like, what made you look at this and be like, hey, that's the right call?
That's the shot. That's the move. Oh, that's the move. Yeah, that was almost really bad. But yeah. I know. And that was one of the things too. Like our photos are terrible. There's no doubt about that. We have no. And like I said, we're geologists. Like the creativity is very, very low.
Well, that's what's crazy. That's why I was so excited talking to you last night. I was like, geology podcast, like it's probably very scientific and all that stuff. But from all the stuff you were saying, I'm like, this is incredibly creative. This is no one else is doing it.
Yeah.
You know, it's not only that you are living in the epicenter of geology and all these people, and you work with this. It's not just that. It's the fact that no one else did it.
Yeah.
You guys are like, fuck it, let's hang out and let's bring these guys on and talk about what we love.
Well, here was the big issue with a lot of the other podcasts, and this was something that we saw too, because similar to you, we did our research, right? We looked at other podcasts in our field, and kind of touching on like economics, hot chicks doing a podcast talking about nothing, and then there was like other technical podcasts, but they were run by companies, right?
And so very central, focused.
very. Everything is towards like a sales pitch, right? At the end of the day, like everything was driven towards buy this product, buy this, buy that. But the actual learning aspect, the actual thought-provoking aspect was always missing. And that was something we're like, I mean, we can ask questions. You know, we can bring smart people on and ask the right questions. Like we might not be the most technical crowd, but we have and that was another thing that I think led to our success as well. And I think that was probably one of the biggest things was that like our first group of guests that we had on were all very, very heavy hitters from the Permian Basin. Yeah, and that was solely from, friendships and networking that we developed very early on. Like our very first guest on the show was Dave Cannon, and he's the senior VP of geoscience at Diamondback Energy. And if you know
a lot of big names, but that sounds
but if for those in oil and gas, I mean Diamondback, they're the ones that are innovating. They're the ones that are on the front lines. They were the ones that
was your first guest.
That was our first guest, drilling the biggest wells, and we built that relationship by Troy did by going to a golf tournament with the guy. And they just happened to be on the same team that day.
I got to learn to golf, man. I keep hearing this.
Fuck, dude. I suck so bad.
You know what my extent of golf is?
I have my dad's... well, I got to say this first.
You go first.
I have my dad's clubs. They're from like... You know how old my dad is. They're from the fucking like 60s. It's like a leather bag. Like 2 of them are wood. And I just go out there and I just like hit the ball as hard as I can and drink beer. That's all I do. And I'm just hope that like, I can be entertaining enough to like stay on the team the rest of the day. Like that's my only goal.
I've never been on an actual golf course to golf. My extent of golfing is a driving range, and it was literally the story.
Yeah.
I used the driving range to pick up chicks,
dude, and
it works.
It works.
But like that's my extent. I was like, I'm never gonna golf, and I keep hearing stories like, oh, how it happened? He was golfing with the guy one day, and they agreed. I'm like, fuck.
Yeah, but I mean, well, that's one. But I just say that as our first guest. But the majority of them were built by us, relationships that we developed prior to actually doing the show.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah. So that was the biggest thing.
Most of my guests have come from Gold's Gym. You'd be amazed the people that walk in and out of that place every day.
That place trips me out, man. When I was working out there and like I wouldn't talk to anyone because I'd be like, oh, it's fucking, I'm just
it's a networking gold mine.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, especially in the TO one, because you get everyone from the Ventura County area, everyone from LA that are trying to get out of LA.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
A lot of big hitters just in and out that you'd never expect.
Yeah.
You'd never expect. I mean, so many of my biggest guests have come from Gold's Gym.
Dude.
It's pretty ridiculous, actually.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of friendships in general come out of Gold's Gym. Yeah. To this day.
I think like you're my only friend outside of Gold's Gym. You and Logan, maybe.
Nice. We made it, Mama. We made it.
Yeah, there's like my friends from high school, like the few friends that I hung out with, like stuck around with, and then people I met at Gold's Gym.
Yeah.
But it's crazy because like Chris Gratton, the tour manager. I mean, this guy's been the tour manager for like everybody, fucking everybody. I mean, I think he's doing Bieber's tour right now or something like that. Like he's just this guy in sweats, at the gym. And then Tony Clark, a world class like top level magician, does all the Vegas shows, trains the Vegas guys.
Yeah.
Just spent a week at the Magic Castle. Known the guy for years before I found out he was like this top level magician.
Yeah.
Out of Golds. I used to crack his back.
Just say hey, turn around, I got you, bro.
Kurt Pescara, world class drummer. He's coming on next week. He's getting back from tour with Sarah McLachlan on the bike at Gold's Gym, Thousand Oaks. If anybody wants to go meet some cool people in the industry.
And more importantly, like similar to what you're touching on, and something that I didn't do until I got into oil and gas was starting a conversation is also the biggest thing, right? Because like for me, I go into Gold's, I'd work out, I go home, rub one out. That's the day. That's the day.
That's a routine.
That's the routine. I stuck to it, start to finish, committed. But I mean, it's so important though to actually like step outside of that box, because just starting that conversation is like 90% of it, right?
Well, it's crazy because I was making a joke with my dad the other day, and he's like, how do you like get all these guests and like this and that? I'm like, well, to be honest, being a outgoing person trying to talk to all these people finally paid off.
Yeah.
Because like I developed all these relationships, and you just never know who you're talking to.
So like in reality, right, though, you're networking.
Yeah.
And you just don't know you're networking. And it's just, that's kind of the business terminology for exactly what you're doing, right? But you're just kind of being yourself. You're just like starting conversations organically, and then all of a sudden it turns into, oh my God, this is actually like an awesome person. Let's like, let's continue talking outside of the gym, blah, blah, blah. Come on my podcast.
Come on my podcast.
Cool.
Well, it's crazy because like podcasts, very much so how we talked about you know, people that just plug in a mic with a USB mic and just talk about nonsense. Like it's cool. You can call it a podcast, you can post it, whatever. But the idea of podcasting very much comes with a personality. You know, like take a comedian. Like a comedian can either as different types of comedy, different types of comics, but there's the personality ones, right?
Exactly.
Their whole setup is a personality. Like,
and that's what makes the greats great, right?
Yeah, like they have this personality behind it that like follows them. That's just who they are. This like ambiance to everything they do.
Yeah.
And very like podcasting. If you listen, like a lot of the good podcasts, it does not that they have to be this charismatic like character, you know, but they have this certain personality to them that allows them to be. This is what the show is. The people coming on are important, but it's like 90% guest, 10% they're talking to that person. Like Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
You know, Joe Rogan is so successful not because he's like the most thought-provoking person, not because he's like the best at what he does, you know, all this and that. He's because he's developed this who he is. So when Elon Musk comes on to Joe Rogan's podcast, my favorite example is James Hetfield. Like I've seen every James Hetfield interview, right?
Yeah.
But
Dude,
why did why did I watch Joe Rogan talk to James Hetfield, right?
The bees.
They talked about bees for 30 fucking minutes. You know, like I don't care. But the fact of the matter is, it's not that it's another James Hetfield interview. It's the fact that Joe Rogan is talking to James Hetfield, right?
Exactly.
So like that's a huge factor. Like anybody listening,
you know that the interview is not going to be just this bullet point. Your career, right? Oh my God, no way. And then tell me more.
What things sound like.
Yeah. No, really. It's just like, and I mean, that's the difference too. Kind of going back to a TV interview versus a podcast, and that's what makes podcasts really good. It's like that unfiltered area where
it's not the Late Show.
Yeah, you can take those tangents, right? You don't need to worry about your censorship or anything like that. You can take it down those rabbit holes, and that's what
you
makes
get to know someone.
Honestly, yeah, that's the most beautiful part about it. And I mean,
there's totally a skill to it because like you have to allow that flow to be there, but at the same time, kind of guide your way through it. You know, what I've been learning is like there's definitely episodes where like I can bring on a close friend and like I could have nothing planned, like let's just fucking talk and you know we'll talk about something creative or whatever. And there's some episodes where it's like I've never met this person, but I met them through this and this, and they agreed to come on, but they have this vast like history and career of doing this great stuff, which is super cool. But it's like I don't want to sit here and be like, so in 1999 when you performed this show, what was it like to meet this? I'm like, I don't fight like.
So here's the question that I have is like when you're doing your podcast, right? Are you especially for the people that you don't know, right? Or do you preface them like, hey, I kind of want to ask you this, that, or this, or do you like to ask it organically and let the conversation roll from there? Like,
so
do you like
actually, it's a rule of mine.
Okay,
I broke it one time, and it was for Philip O'Hanlon, just because that was a different situation. It was learning experience. It was a great interview, fucking kick-ass interview. That guy's badass. But it's actually a rule of mine. I don't allow my questions to be read. Like in most interviews, they'll be like, "Oh, send the questions you want to ask, so our star can go over them."
Yeah.
I'm just like, it's a podcast. Come over and fucking talk. I don't want you to think that it's like that. I want you to come and feel comfortable. Of course, it's my job to have. I always have an outline of like topics and things that I want to know, but it's not like exact this and that. It just kind of help keep things moving. Like it's me allowing me to do my job to keep get the best of the guests. So for me, what I say is I have a guest email with all the information, and I always say like, hey, I don't hold back at all. I don't hold back. I don't refrain from asking any questions. Like if I want to know something, I'm gonna ask it. However, please feel free to say no. Like you don't have to answer everything. Like we're chilling. If you don't want to answer, if you're not comfortable, like don't feel pressure. Like just say I'm not comfortable answering that, and we'll move forward.
Yeah.
Like it's not my job to make you look bad. Like, but it's my job. Like I want to ask you intriguing questions.
Yeah.
And oftentimes it's those questions that I'm like worried about, like, oh, they're probably not going to want to answer that. And I'll ask it and I'll get like the most in-depth, incredible answer just because no one ever asked them. Mm-hmm. And that's the best part about podcasting. Like people sit down like, oh, I've never done anything like that because it was an interview.
No.
Like, I've just never talked about these things before.
Yeah, because you've never been able to take it to that place where it's just been organic, right? Everything's been so cut and dry. So that's the difference with ours too. Is like we give our guest a preset, like more or less like, hey, this is how the outline of the podcast is going to go. But a majority of the time, right, we go totally off script. And
it doesn't have to be that.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be this, but this is a guideline for where we want it to be, because we do have some guests on that are just like
dry. Pulling teeth.
They're, some people, they try their best.
Hey, I've had those guests. I've had, this is my 43rd episode, and that's not a lot in podcasting. I mean, it's enough to say you're podcasting.
Way more than we.
But I've definitely had the guests where like, it's like, come on.
Yeah.
Just give me like just even one more sentence. Like, come on.
I believe in you. I believe in your heart of hearts.
It's crazy because you think like, a lot of times we're talking about what people are doing with their, creativity, whether they're in a band or, anything.
Yeah.
It's infinite possibility with creativity. And I always feel like most people get really excited, or at least are open to talk about it because they never get to. Some people just like look at you like, yeah, that's what I do.
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, come on. You got to give me something else. Like, I'm not interviewing me here. I'm not talking to me here. Like,
K.
K. Yeah, it's like the podcast version of K text. Like, that's some of the answers are that bad.
16-year-old girl texting you.
Yeah, just like K.
Okay.
And then you just cry for the night.
Yo, totally. Emoji happy face.
It's exactly what those guests are.
Yeah.
They're the K texters.
Yeah. God. Yeah, on our show we've had a couple that were super brutal. Super, super brutal. That like we've like you try to keep it going, but like even it comes to a point where we're just like gotta pull the cord, right? And
so as a podcaster though, in your situation, because you like I said, you run a successful podcast, you have great guests, you have it's very professionally done. So with the idea of knowing someone and not knowing someone, like if you know someone, you can assume like they're gonna be a certain way.
Yeah.
Sometimes they totally get you out of left field, but like you can prepare for that differently than you prepare for someone you never met. So, do you keep these things in mind? Like, all right, we're gonna write this outline just in case they fucking suck.
Yeah. Oh no. So that for the most part, the guests that we don't know, that's what we do, right? Just to not assuming they're gonna suck, but just in case things get pretty dry and stale, we can keep to like a point. And that's kind of where I respect the hell out of you, because you're by yourself on that side of the table. Yeah. For me, I'm the co-host, Troy's the other host. And when, things get super bad, we banter back and forth, right? And we talk about it. Yeah, we can keep it moving, and then we can come back to the guest, right? I know it's about the guest, but sometimes it's just like
it's like, come on.
Yeah, come on. But, the majority of the time, luckily, I'm going to say like 95% of the time, the guests have been fantastic. Like an example is one guest we had, Dr. Lev Vernick out of University of Houston. He used to work for the USSR, and dude, it's fucking gnarly, his backstory and everything. And we ended up just going on a 30-minute tangent on like the deepest wall that was ever drilled in Russia.
Whoa.
Yeah. And it just turned into like probably one of our best podcasts. But it totally happened organically. And we were going into it like, we got this Russian dude coming on, like super like stale. Straight up. Because like when he sat down, that's how it was. And it just turned into like this beautiful
thing. Did you hear the national anthem of Soviet Russia?
Yeah, it was pretty intimidating. You're just kind of like,
just coming
you're leaning back. You're like, I want to say, we made it to the moon first, but you can see the footprints there, dog.
Oh my God, whatever. Are we about to break into conspiracy theories right now?
No, that's not that kind of podcast. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Oh no. Please no.
Me and Gavin, my last guest, my tattoo artist. You met Gavin. You were there for my tattoo. Yeah. We almost jumped into it. You were there for my tattoo, weren't you?
Only the Metallica one.
You weren't there for this one?
No.
Oh, it was Nate and Jared that showed up.
I was in the Republic of Texas.
You were in the Republic of Texas.
It's its own country. I'm convinced. I'm convinced.
Midland is its own fucking planet.
Yeah, Midland is, I'm
very happy I haven't come to visit you.
Oh, dude, I mean, you should be.
I'll visit you in Tucson.
I pray to God that everyone that is driving I-20 through Midland, Texas, does not need to stop there. And please don't stop there. Please don't stop there. And if you're driving through late at night and you see a semi rolling up on you, change lanes or just pull off the freeway because they're probably on meth. Yeah,
Really?
It's fucking gnarly, dude. It's a whole nother world.
Fucking
dude.
do meth and drive a semi truck.
Dude, it's like you have these dudes that are on like 72-hour shifts. Like
Just
they've been driving a truck for 72 hours, just hauling water. Dude, it's bad. Number one, like in Texas at least, I know there's more accidents fatal accidents that happen in Midland than anywhere else in Texas.
Jesus.
Yeah, for that like reason. Because you got dudes in semis that are just like...
Don't meth and drive.
Don't meth and drive. Sorry,
just don't meth.
Tangent, yeah.
Don't meth, but if you're going to do meth, just don't drive.
Point of the matter is, hey, take a plane. Don't drive.
Don't go to Midland.
Don't drive. Or, drive north of Midland. It's cool. It's cool.
So jumping back in, regardless of whether you know the guest or not, you have to, with geology, with the science of it, I imagine you bring like a scientist or a professor in, like they're specializing in something.
Oh, yeah.
So you're going to choose the topic that applies to them specializing, right?
Yeah.
So like, how do you, because it can't just be like, oh, I'm bringing Professor blah blah in for this specific topic.
Oh,
like,
dude, we do
tell us everything about this topic. Like, how do you go about choosing the topic and working that into the conversation? Like, what's your technique?
So we do a ton of research beforehand, and that's like one thing.
You hear that, everybody?
Yeah.
Everyone running those crappy podcasts?
A ton of research.
So,
for example, we brought in, who was it? We brought in this guy. His name is Ryan West. He's a reservoir engineer at Admiral. And reservoir engineering is totally out of my ballpark, right? It's a total another planet, and it was 5 days of reading up on like the basics of engineering and then like reservoir engineering and understanding, because like I understand what a reservoir engineer working with one does like day to day, but understanding the science behind it and being able to ask the questions, especially integrated questions between geology and engineering, because that's the hardest part, right? And that's another issue within the industry itself, is this like this big gap between engineers and like geoscientists. And you have geoscientists in one corner, you have engineers in one corner, and they're both moving forward with like these thought-provoking ideas, but they're not working together, which is a huge problem, right? Especially someone who's, I know like you, extremely open-minded, right? When you're looking at a problem, right? And this goes for any kind of industry, and you're looking at it through a very specific lens, you're going to be wrong. Right? In general, you're going to be wrong. And the only way you can get that closer to the right answer is taking a step back and bringing in different kinds of mentalities. So within like it's a similar style of like education as like a liberal arts college, right? Your goal is you're going to take a philosophy class, you're going to take a sociology class, anthropology, business, blah blah blah, as well as like all the classes in your major, not because necessarily you need those classes in order to fulfill your major, but to develop your mind and like being able to attack a problem with like a wider scope of ideas, right? And that's an issue that happens in oil and gas, specifically with engineers and geologists. So that was something that we made a tremendous effort in order to research and in order to ask the right questions. Granted, some of the questions were kind of like, he would go into like some rabbit holes and we'd be like, cool.
I don't know anything about that.
And then we were like okay. Like, yeah, that's awesome. But I mean, at the end of the day, like we needed to prepare for that. And if you don't, as the host of a podcast, then you're doing yourself a disservice and your listeners a disservice. So how can anyone say that science isn't a creative form, isn't a creative platform? Because what you just said, like looking at something with a small lens and stepping back to see, get a bigger picture, to get closer to answer. Like take a music project, for example, recording. Like if you have this exact idea, this exact vision in your head, then you go start to record and you're like forcing it to be exactly what you hear and not allowing this beautiful creation to grow. Yeah.
Like if you can't step back and look at it through a bigger lens, you're going to create shit.
Yeah.
You're never going to succeed.
But that's also the beauty of just having another ear in the room, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So out of having another ear, or just having someone just listening, like, hey, like, it was cool, like this part, or like, hey, you ever think about doing this a little like this? Like in reality, right? It might not be the right answer, right? But just having that thought in the room and having you question yourself, I think is the most important thing. And I think is the most important thing to, whether it's the arts or the sciences. And I think that's kind of something that bridges the gap between both, right? Being able to question this creation that you have in your head, not only from your own perspective, but from an outside perspective, right?
And to allow that in
there, right? And like whether you come back to the same conclusion or not, like that's great, right? If you question something or someone else questions it, right, and you come back to the same conclusion, great. But if they question it and it turns into something different, you've missed that, right? If you're just doing it yourself.
Absolutely.
And I think that's the most beautiful thing about the arts and sciences.
Well, that's why the collaboration, right?
Yeah.
You know, that's like the biggest thing. You know, why do we jam together? You know, why do scientists work on something together? Why are there teams behind these great great cores? The second one, the mountains are still blue. We got
They're
blue
still
Rockies.
blue.
But like, why are there
blue. These cans hold their coldness very well.
Oh my God,
delicious.
But yeah, teams behind anything.
Sponsor the studio core.
Coors Light sponsoring the studio corner. I'd take that sponsor.
Yeah,
Are you kidding?
that's what I mean, dude.
Free beer.
I'm helping you out. Huh?
Yeah, you help me out. Yeah, you're totally helping me out.
Not at all. Not at all.
If I ever get any involvement with Coors Light on anything I do, it's music, the podcast, anything, I'll be sure that I give you all the credit.
Dude, I would wholeheartedly agree. And all I need is a 30-pack every week.
Every week.
Every week.
I feel like was a different issue there.
There are deeper issues.
Anyway, back to the really great thing you were saying before you cracked a freaking beer open. Having a team of people chasing something bigger, creatively, scientifically, anything makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
So, but it sounds like you guys have this little like team. You bring these guests in, like you just have this team of like, what are we gonna like rip out of this person?
Yeah.
And they're probably gonna love you for it.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, it's like it's not that we're trying to rip them apart, right? That's kind of what we want to do. But the goal is just to
make them look bad. Though.
Yeah, we don't want to. Well, not necessarily make them look bad, but just be able to ask the right questions to like make them sit back and be like, "Huh, I didn't think about that." Right?
Yeah,
it's the same concept. That's all we're trying to do is make them be like, "Oh, that's an interesting perspective," and have our listeners say the same thing.
How many times have you looked at like maybe a celebrity or even a scientist, like your favorite scientist, someone that's written this paper or done this study that has like that's famous for this, or how many times have I looked at James Hetfield or Trent Reznor and been like, yeah, this is what they do, but I'd love to find out this one specific thing or find out something else about them, right?
Yeah.
And like it's very much trying to get to that place. Like I'm not here to ask you about X, Y, and Z. Like, yeah, we're going to talk about that, but I want to know the rest of the alphabet in your life. Like, what are those things? Because those things led to those, right?
Yeah.
So it's really cool, like, because you really do have a golden moment. You know, if you can get someone on your podcast that's worth, like, or at your show, whatever it is, that's worth diving into that, like, don't ask that generic question.
Yeah.
Find a way to phrase the question that no one's going to ask, that no one won't even think of, but for some reason, everyone wants to hear it.
Yeah. And so that's another beauty of it, right? So being able to, while they're answering a question, being able to, think of not only a rebuttal, but just being able to think of, the next question to either, push this idea or be, turn it in this direction, blah, 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 but also still like taking in exactly what they're saying. Right?
Yeah, like listen.
Yeah, like listen. Well, yeah, listen. Yeah.
I know it sounds, it sounds cliche. It sounds super cheesy for a podcast, of course, but how many have you heard where someone's like, are they just not listening to what the other one's saying?
Yeah, and that's the big issue with the interview format, right?
Yeah.
The interview format neglects listening, and that's the worst part, I think, of like a standard interview, right?
There's no connection.
There's no connection, right? You ask this question, you look down at the paper, oh, they're done talking, next question, right? That's totally like defeats the purpose of a podcast.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, hey, we got something going. Let's keep it rolling. Let's keep asking questions. And then, hopefully you get to a solution. If not, then, then it comes back around to something else.
So what are like things you don't do then? Like, because what you're talking about is you want to be able to vibe with this person and like you want to be able to word things correctly. You want to have a plan without having it be the set in stone plan.
Yeah.
But like along the way, there's certain things you have to avoid, right?
Oh yeah.
Like I can't, like there's certain, like if I have a friend on, I can call you a little piece of shit, right?
Yeah.
Haha, we laugh it off. But I can't bring someone I've never hung out with.
Do you mean that, man?
Yeah, I mean that, man. Whatever.
It hurts.
Well, and that's an extreme example, right? Like
Yeah.
straight up insulting someone. But like, there's certain things you like have to be careful. You have to stay away from. Like for you guys, for your show specifically, what do you stay away from?
Do you really think I'm a piece of shit, man?
Oh my god.
No, but.
Or in general, for any podcasting.
Like
what's something you have to
obviously, right? Because the last thing we want to do is embarrass someone, right?
Yeah.
Right. So
dick move.
Yeah, it's a total dick move. Right? But so the last thing we want to do is embarrass someone. The other thing that we don't want to do is we don't want to be aggressive with the way we ask questions, which has happened before. That's happened on the format, and similar to I know I've told you this off camera, but the way we actually edit our podcast, right? So, after we're done producing it, we'll take the video and the audio, and then, we'll edit it out, and then we'll run it by the guest, and the guest will have final say. We don't publish anything until we get the guest approval.
Really?
Yeah. And it's kind of shot us in the foot because we've got like 4 podcasts that are sitting up in Spaceland somewhere because guests aren't actually responding.
Oh, wow. They don't even respond?
Yeah, they don't even respond, right? So we'll do the
podcast authority to anybody.
Yeah. So, but here's the thing. It makes the guest feel better about coming on, right? Because most guests are like, oh, what are you going to ask? Like, what are you going to say? And it's like, hey, we want you to be comfortable to come on, right? And we've had some podcasts that have gone from 3 hours that we've edited down to 30 minutes. But that's mainly because, the team has gotten a little out of hand in those podcasts, and it's kind of defeated the purpose of the show. But I mean, there are definitely pitfalls that we want to avoid because, I mean, similar to your podcast, right? You want to focus on creativity. You want to focus on, just this general idea of, not general, because it's not a general idea.
It's creative community.
Yeah,
it's people to understand that creativity is absolutely necessary and is there in anything you do.
Yeah.
And tapping into that will help you discover the passions in life, the great things in life.
That's actually beautiful. Yeah. No, 100%. No, I agree with that. All right. That's way better than what I was going to say. But, yeah. God, I totally lost my train of thought. But no. Yeah, for the most part, yeah, there are these specific pitfalls that we want to avoid, and giving the guest, like making the guest comfortable for us is definitely something that we're interested in doing.
And
right?
you think letting them decide if it's worthy of posting is something that makes them feel comfortable?
Yeah, 100%.
Because I refuse to do that.
Yeah, I know. And
I mean, it's not that like I'm against like their opinion. Yeah. But it's just like kind of like you said, it shoots you in the foot. Like I can't afford to have one guest slip up. Like say I have a huge guest come on, right?
Yeah.
Because my whole thing is I don't edit. It's all about the integrity of start to finish, right? I want that to be a big part of what I'm doing, especially when you're talking about creativity, because those seem. Yeah. It's very much. It's like writing a song. You got to have the first verse and then the chorus, and like you have to have all that build up so that fucking solo or that hook is great, right? Yeah. It's very much like what it is.
There's a crescendo.
Yeah, it's literally.
Yes.
But
I am in the corner.
But like I have to be careful because like what if I do have that great guest on and there's like literally one thing they say that they might look back like I felt stupid when I said that.
Yeah.
And then like I don't want to post it, Yeah. So I mean, and it's dangerous. Like it's a dangerous game to play.
It is a super.
I give you props for doing that.
Like it is extreme. Like I said, we've had 4 podcasts with guests that we like post about like, hey, we just recorded with this person. Expect approval. Wait, or we don't say that, but we're like expect a show coming out soon, and it's been like 4 months.
Jesus.
Yeah.
4 months.
Yeah.
Just following up too.
We're following up like weekly. We're like, hey, have you seen this? Have you seen this? And then it's just like, oh, I'm busy, and we're like, so you're getting to it, and it's just like I'm busy. And it's like I understand like there's like this aspect where you're like, oh man, like the work's crazy right now, but at the same time it's like
it's been 4 months.
It's been fucking 4 months. Like
it's also like you just on a show. Like don't you want to hear what you did?
Yeah. So yeah, with one specific guest, they wanted certain things edited out. We edited them out. We put it back in. And it's totally understandable, right? Because they were telling a story that was kind of like on the fence, and could get them in trouble. So we're like, okay, we'll take that out. So we took it out. Sent it back, right? All right, final version. Are you cool with this? And still just kind of like in Spaceland. So, but that's the other thing too, right? Like these people's reputations are on the line, and like that's the issue with having such high-ish profile guests like in oil and gas, right? Because we're talking to like VPs, CEOs, and like these senior geologists at certain companies. So if they say the wrong thing, they say the wrong thing, or they say something a little too out of line, then they get fired, and that's the last thing we want. Like
that's the other thing though, because you guys are asking very specific questions about like what they do for a living, right? Mm-hmm. Like say I have a famous guitar player come on, right, and he's in a band.
Yeah.
Like I'm not gonna sit there and ask him questions about like how did you deal arguing with your with your manager and like getting this deal.
Exactly.
Like, I'm not gonna set you up to talk shit about anybody. I'm not gonna set you up to do anything. But because of the field that you're in, like I can ask you, what was it like when you signed that first deal? Like learn to phrase your questions so they can answer it comfortably.
Exactly.
And that's a technique. So like I definitely put a lot of effort into that.
Yeah.
But I definitely see why with you guys, like because it's harder to phrase those questions in your basically your niche or whatever.
Yeah,
niche,
so that was something that kind of grew along too, and that's kind of what developed the show as well, right? Because the goal is to make the guests as comfortable as possible, but also as a host, we learned a ton, right? Because it went from us being like, well, why'd you guys drill this well? That well's fucking sucked. And they're like, I digress. Like, go fuck yourselves. I'm leaving. And then
I'm going to go make a bunch of money while you...
Yeah, like, all right, I'm going to go collect my huge paycheck while you fuckers sit here and, like, jerk each other off. But it turned into, like... It turned into, hey, like, when you're developing this asset, what were some of the pitfalls you ran into? Right?
Yeah, and all of a sudden they want to answer.
But and then they're like, oh, okay, yeah, we ran into X, Y, and Z. But like you said, it's exactly making the guest feel comfortable and phrasing the questions properly. And that's huge part of like doing the podcast, right?
Well, it's also in it grabs you. You know, like for me, when I listen to podcasts or not even podcasts, just anything, any sort of interview, like I'll be turned off immediately if someone just asks a straight up question like that. What you're saying, like, oh, why'd you dig a deep well?
Yeah.
It's like, it's a valid question, but like, who gives a shit?
Yeah.
But when you ask something that's gonna like engage the importance of it, engage like the actual like the meaning behind a choice, like why'd you write that song? What was that song about? Like, who gives a shit?
Yeah,
like,
no one.
What inspired that song? What were you going through? Like, why did you choose this guitar? What was it? The sound that you used to portray this feeling?
Was it American Pie?
Was it American?
I'm sorry.
Oh my god! But it's true. Like,
was the bird freed? I'm sorry.
Anybody
that's
listening,
all I
want you all to know that I'm a guitar player.
This whole podcast was for that moment.
I know you're waiting. I'm a guitar player. I'm a songwriter. I perform a lot. And if Matt is ever in the crowd or even in my studio just hanging out and someone touches a guitar, especially me, he will yell Freebird. Yes, we all have that friend. I know you all do. And I was like, at one point, he's going to bring up Freebird. I don't care what it's about. He's going to find a way to work Freebird into the conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, he's done it.
He's done.
Round of applause.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to be on.
Freebird has been worked into this conversation.
No, but go on. I don't know what you're saying. You're talking about, like, why'd you do this song?
Wording questions. Yeah. Knowing how to ask questions to... You want to... It sounds manipulative, but it's not. It's about, like... You don't want to have to ask a surface level question and try to dig deep. You want to ask a question that's going to inspire the deepest answer.
Exactly.
Because that gets the guest excited. And a guest being excited is them being comfortable.
Yeah. And exactly. And it shows that as a host, you are engaged, right? You are you are thinking about you're listening to what they're saying and you're able to continue a thought. Sorry. Rockies. But
the Rockies.
But I mean, I think that is as someone who does a podcast, it's the most important thing. I think that's the most important factor is making guests feel comfortable and being able to ask the right questions and like how to phrase those questions, right? So, and
that's the thing, like no matter how much research you do, you have to podcast. You have to do an episode at least once a week in the beginning. I don't care how often you want to do it, but you got to keep doing it because that's the only way you're going to figure it out.
Yeah. Our first episodes were so brutal.
Like mine weren't that great. I mean, I like my first episodes, but like to see how far I've come comfortable wise and like being able to riff with the guests.
Yeah.
I mean, these are things you can't just be like, I'm going to do this time. Like that, you have to just, like anything else, you got to do it. You got to do it as much as possible.
Yeah.
Actually, something I'm looking to do right now is I'm going to start hitting up a local podcast. I want to be a guest.
Dude,
I need to get that perspective. I really want to be on.
This is the first podcast that I've been on outside of what we do.
Yeah.
And it's been a beautiful thing, and we need to get you on.
I don't know. Why would you bring me on to that podcast?
We'll figure it out. We'll make it work.
So Matt, I wanted to tell you, actually all you guys, I wanted to tell you about this rock I found outside my house, and I don't know if you guys know what this is.
Dude, that's a sick rock, bro.
And just have you guys go on like the ancient and prehistoric history of this rock.
Dude, I will give you the history of that rock from conception to how it ended in your backyard.
Will you really?
I will.
I will. You know what? I'm coming out to Tucson or Midland, wherever the hell you are at the time, and I'm bringing a rock.
Yeah, moving to Tucson. I'm in the process of leaving the worst place on the planet to moving to, Tucson.
I feel like the way you describe Midland, moving to Tucson is like someone in like imprisoned in Soviet Russia moving to California.
Oh, dude, it's beautiful. I can't wait.
Soviet Russia is a topic today.
Dude, it finds its way back in the conversation, man. You just
does.
You can't avoid it.
If I finally bring my dad on the show, which come on. world's greatest artists. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like
100%.
Soviet Russia is going to be a pretty big topic too.
Oh, I feel like it's going to actually hold weight in that conversation.
Oh yeah,
like
he was actually in prison.
It's not like, oh yeah, this is Russia, dude. It's like, dude.
Oh my God. So you guys, it's not just like a fun game you guys do. Like you guys have a logo, you guys have a brand, you guys have all this stuff. Walk me through. I mean, don't go too crazy on it, but like, say I've never heard of podcasting and I want to start a podcast.
Yeah.
Walk me through your story and like how hey, let's do a podcast. All right, we need a logo, we need a name, we need a website, we need a boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
Like how'd you set up to start podcasting?
So the most important thing is understand before the podcast even starts, right? Understand your audience, right?
Like a niche.
Understand your niche, right? Because that's what people are looking for, right? If you're trying to be like a Joe Rogan or like some like podcast that's already popular, it's not going to happen.
Even Joe Rogan started out with a niche, right?
Yeah, he started out with a niche, right? And there's like this. It's an awesome image, and I wish I had it in front of me so I can like look at it as reference. But so you have the innovators, right? You have those people who were the first people to podcast, right? So let's just say Joe Rogan wasn't the first. There were other podcasts beforehand, right?
Yeah.
And then you have the early adopters, right? Those are the people that this concept isn't proven, but I see where this is going, right? And then you have like, okay, so then the rest of the team joins. I forgot that this is like the most important part. And then after that, you have the laggards. So I feel like podcasting we're past the early adopters and it's getting into this stage of like almost laggards, but this bell curve is just, it goes down, right? And then you have these people who are just late to the game and then they fail. And it's called like the curve of innovation or something like that.
I know what you're talking about. I couldn't tell you the name, but I know exactly what you're talking about.
So I feel like, especially nowadays in podcasting, right, you have, the innovators and the early adopters. They've carved out their niche, right? Those were like the OG people on YouTube, the OG people doing podcasts, blah, blah, blah. And now it's in a phase where you need to have that specific niche. And if you don't have that niche, it's hard to carve a space because there's just so much out there, right? There's so much information out there, right? What is differentiating you from the other guy, like you said, across the street who's plugging in a USB and like, who's like talking to their MacBook and saying like, dude, I saw this movie this weekend. It was sweet. Right? So like, how are you actually carving out your space, right? What is your target audience, right? Where is there a group of people that are going to be interested in your podcast and what are you going to do? And so that's one of the things that we found very early on and we were lucky to find because we were like, there's no young professionals talking rocks and oil and gas. Talking rocks. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. So that's where we're just like, cool, we found our space, right? And now that we found our space, how do we leverage that space, right? Where are we going to find the most listeners in this realm? And that's where the majority of our time is directed through marketing through LinkedIn, right? Because that's where the professionals are, right? That's who we're trying to market to. We're not trying to market to,
interesting. Okay.
The guy at the Y. We're not trying to market to like, just like the average everyday Joe. It's like we have a very specific market that we want to target, right? Because the average person doesn't care about oil and gas.
Yeah.
So that's
at least at the depth you're going into.
Exactly. So right, like exactly like what's going on in the subsurface, what's going on with the rock. So that was the first thing that we wanted to do, and then once we carved out that space, it just kind of blew up from there. I'll say from that.
So a niche is it niche or niche? I've heard it both ways.
Tomato, potato, caramel.
Thank you for all the words that can be sounded out differently, Matt.
It's a gift.
You're a man of many talents.
It's a gift. It's a hey.
So I'm gonna go with niche.
Roquets.
Maybe I'll change it. Maybe I'll use niche at the next episode, but niche for now. So find one. It's necessary. You absolutely have to have it, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
It brings you your show. It brings you what you're gonna do. So after you have that, what are your next steps? Like, all right. So I had obviously microphones. I need a recording system.
And then it's gonna be. You need to deliver a product, right? That's the most important part, right? You find your niche, but if you're not asking provoking questions, like everything that we just basically covered to this point, right? If you lack that creativity, if you lack that ability to listen to your guest and actually ask them something that's going to continue the conversation, right? Like this is good stuff. like, screw the outline. We're going to continue going down this rabbit hole. This is way better than what we had planned.
Yeah.
Right. So being able to actually be a host and being able to, keep the listeners engaged, right? Because that's the most important part. Because how many people actually listen to podcasts start to finish, right?
Yeah.
Most people are listening, 15 on their commute to work, right?
Yeah.
The goal is to, when they hop back in their car, when they hop back into
they press play again,
right? That's what you want. Or when they're sitting at their desk at work, that they're not tempted to go on YouTube and look at the next like dog that's like chasing after a car video, some bullshit like that, right? You want them to be engaged in your podcast, and that only happens if you're asking those questions that they're like, oh yeah, I didn't think of that.
Yeah.
Right? So they're sitting at their desk and they're like, oh wait, they should have asked this. Oh, but they're continuing to be like, okay,
my whole
they feel
thing
like
is
a part of it.
They have to feel like they're at the table.
Yeah.
Like they need to feel like they're sitting at the table watching you guys do this.
Yeah.
Or listening to you guys do this, depending on how they're.
Yeah.
I like that. Okay. So you have that now. You have to go out. You need microphones. All that stuff is necessary. Like if you built your podcast through literally recording and then posting on a Squarespace website.
So, luckily for us, and it was a godsend, in Midland, Texas. God damn, this is gonna sound so ridiculous, but you're gonna love this.
Sounds ridiculous.
You're gonna love this.
Midland, Texas.
Yeah. So, this company, it's called Mudsmith, and the owner of the company owns a drilling mud company. So they provide drilling mud for when they're drilling wells, for the most part. Don't need to go into details about that. Dude's made a ton of money.
Okay.
And with the shit ton of money that he has, he built a professional recording studio in Midland, Texas. So it's like this warehouse. You walk into this warehouse. It's this huge stage, stadium seating, and oh man, there's seats within like this warehouse that are from a very famous opera house that was renovated. Yeah, it's crazy. So he went in and bought all the seats and put it in this warehouse. Yeah, and then within this warehouse, there's
a hobby.
Yeah, it's a professional recording studio, and we found this recording studio via Googles, and the Googles, and we found, and like when we said like, hey, we're gonna carve out the space this time, we want to try this podcast thing out, like whatever, like how much is it gonna cost, and luckily for us, there was a studio engineer that was there that kind of guided us along the way because, like, granted, like, we understand the technical side. We understand the questions to ask. But, like, this stuff, like, no clue. Absolutely no clue, right? Lighting, sound. Like, it's a huge deal. Yeah. And you know that more than anyone. You understand how, your voice is captured, what kind of mics to use. Like, that's something that we didn't know.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what someone that, plugs in, their audio speaker through their computer just doesn't understand, right? Like, I'm going to talk through my AirPods, bro.
It's also expensive. Like, I think people need to understand, like, if you want it, what my dad always tells me, he says, I'm not rich enough to buy cheap things. I'm sorry, I'm not, what is it? I'm not
rich enough. I was going to say that doesn't sound like a very good.
Is that what it is? Yeah, no, I'm not rich enough to buy cheap things.
Is that for sure?
That's true. I'm not rich enough to buy cheap things. And the whole motto is like, I can't afford to buy something bad to have to upgrade it constantly or have it break and replace it. That's true.
Yeah. Okay.
I smell it. Yeah. And so and very much, and I think people need to understand that because it's not that these USB mics are bad because some of them sound just as good as this. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. I run a recording studio. This is a full recording studio. So obviously I'm like a nerd about this shit.
Yeah.
So I wanted these mics. I wanted this preamp, all that. I'm using Cubase. I get that. But there's definitely ways to enhance it. I'd say don't be afraid to invest in the right things. And sound, audio quality, that's where you need to invest all your money.
Oh, 100%.
Right away off the bat, no one wants to hear your crappy sound.
Yeah. And that was something where, for us initially, right, we were like, it was a blessing. It was a blessing in disguise. Like being able to go to a professional recording studio and actually do this, and then now being able to, do it ourselves, right? We've built that following, but that doesn't happen if we don't have that guidance and that equipment right out of the gate. And it like I owe it all to that studio, right? Because we had the mics like this and
the SM7Bs.
But
I love these mics.
Yeah, they're fantastic. But in all reality, you need the equipment, right? Because we try to do this through like a BS like universal microphone that you put in the middle of the table and everyone just talks. Right.
Well, see, the thing is, those can work, but if you're gonna go so it's like the whole I'm not rich enough to buy cheap things. Like if you get that, then you need a sound treated room.
Yeah.
You can't have
but
sound bouncing
but
off.
most reality or most situations,
Like
right?
you don't have that, right?
Yeah. It's like, yo, there's a garbage truck driving by, and like, oh shit, well, we can't use any of that audio, right?
Especially, yeah. I mean, it's I don't know if you're familiar with cardioid mics. That's like you can buy cheap ones. Like I used to use cardioid mics, and the way they work is they're incredibly sensitive. They're used for like vocals. They're not necessarily good for broadcasting. They're great. It's great sound, but like if I had my cardioid mics, the first few episodes have them, and like the wind blew outside, you would hear it. Like they're incredibly sensitive.
Yeah.
So some of these mics, I mean, they're designed to be incredibly powerful because they want to pick it up. But for broadcasting, podcast mics, like
You got to be
do your research. You know, find out what works. Know how microphones work. Know how to speak into it. Know that I have to be here, and like standing back here makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
Know that I can't talk like this. You know.
Yeah. And that's also, I mean, I'm sure, I don't know. I don't know if you've had that with guests, right? Because this environment is super intimate. But like for us, we have a screen that's like on the other side of the room.
Yeah.
And so when the guests like go into presentations or, you know, we pull something up, they usually like go like, you know, they look at the screen and they don't, you know, adjust their head. Yeah. They
Whoever's
just turn
listening,
their
I'm sure
head.
you can hear the difference
And we're
from
just
this
like,
to this.
and like us, like we're like, yo, get back on the mic, right?
Yeah.
Now we know that. But initially we didn't know that. So when guests went like this, we would have to go in and like, you know, edit the audio to like boost their sound or whatever. So
that's the problem though. Like, you know, even in editing, there's some things you can't change.
Yeah.
You know?
And it still doesn't sound the same. You could tell there's something up. There's no way to make it, you know, the same as this. But at the end of the day, it turns into a problem.
Yeah, I mean, audio is everything. This is what this platform is. Like, I mean, I don't even have 4K cameras yet. Like, these cameras you're watching through are just regular HD cameras, but the lighting, you know, that's another thing. Like, lighting makes these look like much better than they actually are. Like, I got these cameras at Target. At the electronics section, they're Panasonic camcorders. Target.
Ooh.
And they don't look that good, but you throw these freaking LED lights on there,
Fantastic.
you know, and they look good, right?
Yeah.
It's about knowing your environment, knowing what you're doing, knowing your craft.
Yeah.
Like, it's not just about sitting down and talking. Like, if you're going to present a product, you know, you got to present the product. You got to present it in the best way possible.
Exactly.
And like, understand that you're not going to be the best quality off the bat. Like, you have to be shitty in the beginning.
Oh, it's not.
Even if it's great in the beginning, you're gonna get to a place where you're gonna look back and say it's shitty.
Yeah. I mean, if you look where anyone started in the podcast world, nothing was perfect in the beginning, right?
Absolutely.
It's everything. It's all been trial and error to this point, and it still is. And as someone who does a podcast, you know this as well as I do, you need to keep innovating within your own podcast, right? You can't be set in stone with this idea. And if you are, then it's not bound to fail, but you're gonna get stale, right?
Oh yeah, no, it's just gonna fall. It's gonna be the same shit over and over again.
Exactly.
Which, like, there's really no need for that. There's no reason to be there.
Yeah.
You know, don't be afraid to upgrade. Don't be afraid to be like, you know what? I've been doing this for 43 episodes. I'm gonna change it up, and I want to expand it even to a bigger idea.
I mean, first and foremost, right, is buying the cameras, right, and then buying the lights, right. Everything is a step in the right direction, and that's what it is, right? Because it also shows the people who have been following and your new followers that you're invested in this.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? Because if you continue to do the same thing, they're like, oh, okay, this is just like
it's like a day job.
It's a day job. Exactly.
Like, I do this because I fucking love doing this.
Exactly.
Like, this is the first thing I found in life outside of working out and music that I love this much.
Because, I mean, that's the thing, right? You want to deliver a product that people are going to enjoy.
And they can sense it, you know? And like, anybody like wanting to start a podcast, like, if you start it and you get 5-6 episodes deep, you don't like it, don't do it.
No.
Like, because this is not one of those things that you can fake. People can hear it in your voice. People can feel it. I interviewed a guy named Cole Rowland. He's a YouTube sensation, like huge famous guitar player. He's 25, one of the greatest guitar players I've ever seen. And I interviewed him. It was the one interview I did it was before I was doing video. So I interviewed him on FaceTime with, he's in Canada. And
that's pretty badass.
And he talked about, being a YouTuber, how much work goes into it and how the consistency, and like, it's an incredible amount of work. Especially him. He delivers top quality product.
Yeah.
But he made a point. He's like, you can't fake it. Like, you cannot go. Like, people will know when you're tired.
Yeah.
People will know when you shouldn't be recording. He's like, if you need to take time off, take time off.
Here's the other thing too. People will know when you're not authentic.
Oh,
like,
yeah,
that's the most important
That's when
thing.
it happens.
Right.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean like you're necessarily tired, right? Like, I can be like, hey, like, you do that music thing, right? YouTube guitars, nice. But no, it's like legitimately, and then it's the other side is like the, oh my god, YouTube guitars, no way, I have this.
It's like, dude, relax.
You need to find that area, especially like in the podcasting world, where it's like, oh, this is a real dude who's actually asking legitimate questions. Like, he's not being like a fake piece of garbage.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I mean, in anything, authenticity is the biggest thing. Integrity, everything.
Yeah, you're actually being sincere about the questions you're asking. You're actually interested in seeing where this is going. It's not just like.
Well, so that's a big thing for me as well. Like, for example, say take Slash. Famous Slash, top hat guitar, incredible.
Yeah.
Obviously I'd want to talk to Slash. I had tons of questions, but like if I was ever in a situation where I'm like, I'm not interested in talking to Slash, I don't care how important or famous he is, I'm not gonna have him on the show.
Yeah.
Because like and that's been my rule since day one. I have to want to talk to this person.
Yeah.
And if I don't want that, then what the hell am I bringing to the table? I'm not going to be just a bridge for like listeners to not be able to ask questions to someone that's sitting in front of me.
Yeah.
It's absurd. That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard.
Exactly.
So I mean, for you was like logo and branding, do you think that's a big thing regarding podcasting? I don't know if that you guys are super into that. I don't think you need to be just regarding.
So it was, I feel like we got a logo very early on, and then we're like, it works. Like we're committed to it, right? And the brand, I mean, I guess that just kind of developed with the image that we're trying to portray in the podcast, right? Our brand is just like, hey, we're actually asking technical questions. We're not affiliated with the company. And that was also kind of a blessing as well, because both Troy, the host, and myself, we worked for this company called Trey Resources, and our president at the time, when we're like, hey, we have this idea, right? We'd like to, go on with it. Is it cool with you? And he gave us a thumbs up. He said, talk about whatever you want, do whatever you want. He's like, you're giving our company like exposure.
Yeah.
Right.
Publicity.
Exactly. Just don't be a dick. Right. That was like his one thing.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh, cool, we can do that. And I was like,
can you do that?
No, it's in a public place now. In a very edited place. Yes, I can. But, that was a blessing in disguise, right? And that's what gave us that ability to like, kind of move forward.
I think that's really important too. Is starting a podcast, like be your own person, be your own thing. Like don't try to be what someone else is. Don't try to be affiliated with something that you don't want to be affiliated with. Don't set limits before you've even started.
Exactly. Exactly.
And especially when you're deciding what your niche. Take your pick.
Niche.
Especially when you're deciding what that is, like, don't put a limit on it. Like, don't choose one that's gonna say we're only about this. Like, I could have easily started a podcast that said I only do music. Dude, I've had a comedian, I've had a magician, I've had fucking all kinds of people, and like I'm having you.
Yeah, well, yeah, the total outside. I mean,
a geologist, scientist, but runs a podcast. Like, this is great. Like, this information. I wish when I was starting my podcast, I could listen to an episode like this.
Yeah,
I wish I had heard everything we're saying right now.
Yeah, and I think that is also. You touched on that. That is probably, as far as innovating, right? You brought the cameras, you brought the lights in, you got better mics.
Yeah.
Right? These little steps here and there, but also the quality of guests that you bring on, right? Yeah. Not necessarily the quality, but the diversity of guests you bring on, right? And being able to stick to the theme of your show, right? Because that's what this is at the end of the day, the theme of your podcast, and stay true to that, but being able to branch out. I think that's the biggest thing. Because if you brought on 20 guitar players,
it'd be fun. Like, it'd be cool.
I mean, back to back, right? Like, you only had guitar players on. You talked about the same thing every time, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's not. No, it doesn't. I mean, you'll have the same 20 listeners every time.
See, the thing with that though is like if I brought 20 guitar players on that were like actually famous guitar players, it would be more about their story than like, and there'd be like 3 or 4 episodes where we talked about actual guitar playing.
Yeah, okay.
But see, that's the thing. It's like
I smoked that pipe. Yeah, you're right.
But yeah, it's cool. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, that's cool. I'm not super into that. Like, I want to hear the story, but I think what's important, and everyone should remember this, to be a good host, to pull off a good show. And I'm not saying that I'm running the perfect show. Like, I don't even. It is what it is.
It's the best.
I love doing what I do. But I think from my personal experience for hosting, running a show, and a good quality show, I take pride in that and how much I put effort into this.
Yeah.
And the podcast I've listened to, most importantly, being able to, like, anybody can sit down at that table, and because you know what your show is, you can work that person into talking about themselves and their opinions to follow your show, to match your show.
Yeah.
Like, you have to have that skill.
Yeah.
And that means you have to be solid in who you are and what you do.
Yeah.
Authenticity, right? So, yeah. Like, I can come on the show and you guys can get me talking about rocks. The next thing you know, we've had a fucking episode. I've never even thought about geology once in my life. You know? Like, that's the way to do it.
Exactly.
I mean, you don't put yourself purposely in that situation, but you never know. Someone could come on and just totally roast you.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
It's like, fuck. This guy sucks.
This guy's the worst.
The worst. I want to win.
But yeah, no. I wholeheartedly agree with that. Yeah, and now that I'm thinking about it more, yeah, that speaks the truth. Being able to host this and still portray the image but still kind of like deliver that message.
That's why people are coming back.
Right? Yeah,
that's why people come back to listen. Like as we said, like Joe, we will come back to listen to Joe Rogan talk to this person.
Yeah,
we don't want to hear Jimmy Fallon. I
want to hear Rogue Jogan. That's all I want to hear. I don't want to hear some dude laughing into a mic.
Dude, I don't watch any of that shows. I don't watch TV much.
Oh, dude.
And like I see these memes all the time about Jimmy Fallon laughing. I was like, I gotta watch it just to see how true this is. This guy just laughs at everything.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know either. I'm there for the memes.
You're a cultural meme person.
Yeah,
you're on board.
100%. I believe
you're a meme aficionado.
Yeah, the memes keep everyone grounded. That's all I'm gonna say.
Memes one day will keep me grounded, and the next day I'll be having anxiety just from looking at memes. Like I'm not really an anxious guy. Like I don't get stress and anxiety that like is actually like I'll get stressed over stupid shit. And, like by the end of the day, all right, fine, whatever, I'm over it. But like, if I look at Instagram too long and like memes, just like it's like I almost feel like I'm playing a game with myself. How many memes can I get in before I press lock on the screen?
I delete.
It's a disease,
dude. I delete the app. Like I straight up delete it off my phone. I don't delete the account, but I'll delete it. Yeah, I delete the app because having that, like, and people are like, oh, just log out. If I log out, like I'll log back in. Right?
Oh yeah, no, it's too easy.
Yeah, it's too easy. Yeah, I delete the app and I'll just say, hey, until like Saturday, I'm not gonna fucking look at this thing.
I like that. Everyone fucking do that right now.
Everyone do that except
after you listen to this episode.
Except Studio Corner, if that's a option. But no, have you ever done that? Like, not to like totally sidetrack this conversation, but looked at the analytics and like how much you're on the app, like daily.
Well, so the iPhone I don't know why it stopped, but I used to get messages at the end of every week of how much screen time. And it fucked with my head, dude.
It's disturbing.
Like, I'm talking like 4.5 hours on my phone, not even my computer. And I spend a lot of time editing things and, in the studio, like all that stuff. But on my fucking phone.
Yeah.
The only thing I do productive on my phone is actually post. And I don't post that much.
No. Everything else is just bullshit.
It's literal bullshit.
It's literally just like it's like taking a dump reading, right? To the extreme. Right, and you've just taken that to like everyday life. That's really what it is.
What a nightmare.
Yeah,
and I literally like I
was gonna say every day it was saying 45 minutes I was spending on Instagram.
Oh my god!
And I was like, whoa.
Like, why?
No, I don't need to do this.
And I don't actually care about any of these people.
Yeah, I don't. Well, in 90% of it is memes. So, yeah.
Well, because it's like, it's funny. It's entertaining. It's like watching a show and just scrolling and looking at memes. But, like, literally, I've developed, like, this anxiety where if I start scrolling and it, like, speeds up, like, it's like everything moving so fast and then stopping and reading something funny. And, like, 99% of the time, memes are negative.
Yeah.
It's a joke. It's a dark joke. And, like, I'm all for that. But you read enough of that in the middle of the day for no reason, your brain just goes to a dark place.
Yeah.
Like
if you wake up in the morning and you're reaching for your phone to like look at Instagram, there's a problem.
Yeah,
there's a
big
problem.
Time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I do that still. I mean, I started a new ritual. I fell off of it a little bit. I read a book called The Perfect Day Formula by Craig Ballantyne. I'm sure everyone listening has heard of that book and probably read it. You know what? I give it props. I'm not big on those self-help
books. All right,
books.
give me the Cliff Notes version because I don't know what it is.
It's all about it's a perfect day formula. He talks about like what goes into like achieving a perfect day and like the little like things you can do to conquer your day and what actually makes it a day and like how to. It's really simple and basic, but once you read it and like he suggests like actual like action.
Yeah.
Because most of these books talk about fucking philosophy, and it's great. Makes people feel good, makes them feel like they can talk about having a successful life because they read books.
Yeah.
But like this actually like gave a plan for action, told you to try things. So I tried some of it, you know, and for about a month, I woke up at 5 a.m. every single day, no matter what day, no matter how late I was up. I woke up at 5 a.m. and I spent the first hour of every day playing my guitar. I didn't look at my phone. I walked in the studio, and either was running scales, writing, whatever.
Yeah.
I held my guitar for an hour, and then I read for an hour.
Nice.
And then it was 7 a.m. And then, at the time I was injured, so I couldn't go to the gym. I was like, all right. So then I would have breakfast, I'd shower, and from 8 to like noon, I would be in the studio recording, working on projects, working on the podcast, booking guests. Dude, in 1 month, what I accomplished was out of this world. And I was literally, by 1 p.m. every day, I was confused because I had nothing left to do.
Yeah.
Like, that's how simple it was. And like, I maybe spent 10 minutes total on my phone.
It's crazy that when you take that distraction, because that's what it is, out of your life, how much more productive you can be. Because I was the same way. That's what I noticed, right? Because I was like, I'm spending so much time on this bullshit. Once I deleted everything, and my phone literally turned into an alarm, and people can call me. That's all it turned into, right?
Yeah.
And so at that point, like, it's still like somewhat a distraction, but at the end of the day, like, holy shit, I was spending 10 minutes on my phone a week, and how much I was able to accomplish at work with my thesis or whatever projects I was working on. It was just like, where'd all this free time come from? Oh yeah, you weren't doing the thing that you were doing every single day.
So I started implementing this formula, and I haven't quite mastered it yet. Don't get me wrong, I totally fuck up on it a lot. But I have this thing now. It's like, I will not open Instagram or social media unless I'm going to post, whether it's my story or an actual post, and ask myself, is that post something I actually want to post? Do I want to post a picture of my next guest? Do I want to post a picture of me playing guitar, video of me playing guitar? Like this, because it's still something you have to do if you want to like have any sort of like publicity in business. Like it's a huge part of with everything you do, especially creatively. I tell myself, am I opening Instagram? And if I'm going to, am I going to post something that's actually worthwhile, a good post, has quality to it, something that I want to be exposed for?
Yeah.
And if I do, I'll scroll for like a minute. But if I scroll for like over a minute and I have like, that's the thing is like, I only scroll if I go to post something that I actually want to post. And chances are by the time I'm finished posting, I have no interest in scrolling.
Nope.
It's interesting. Literally, I've never, like, I post, do my things, I'm done. I posted it, let it sit. It's like that's whatever like satisfaction I need from it, I get from that.
Yeah.
And I force myself, it's like, hey, I want to expose something that I truly care about. And like, I mean, it's hard to stick to that because sometimes you're just like, fuck it.
The scroll.
But yeah, it's I mean, it's waking up earlier and not allowing yourself to look at a screen.
Yeah.
Is crazy. It'll rewire your fucking brain.
Oh, it's fantastic. I agree 100%. Yeah. But yeah, sorry for that sidetrack.
No, don't. I'm glad we talked about it. I think that's a huge thing.
I took you down the rabbit hole.
No, I love that because I mean, dude, even when I started the podcast, this is a one-man operation. I do everything myself, start to finish. Recording my own music.
What about the dude sitting over there, dude?
Oh yeah, we got a ghost in here. But it's like how much things changed for me.
Yeah.
Because there's no extra time to bullshit. And when I wake up and tackle, like, I can be done by 1 p.m. and like have nothing to do. But if I wake up and if I don't wake up and I don't do that stuff, I could be 8:30. Oh, I forgot to do all this stuff.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden,
how the fuck did that happen? Right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's literally a mental state. So it's a good thing we talked about it, Matt,
for the people.
So before we turn off here, I want to talk about monetizing.
Okay.
Monetizing a podcast, because it's important. It's what I'm going to be getting into soon here. Advertising, sponsors, all that stuff. And I want to get your opinion, because you guys did that right away.
Yeah.
You guys jumped on that because you had a very specific audience. Like, obviously, you guys had a great game plan. Like, props to you. Kick-ass game plan. Fucking worked out awesome.
Yeah.
Talk to me about, first off, the difference between a sponsor and an advertiser, if there is one.
No. Okay, well.
Yeah, no, and what's the approach? Like, how do you, like, start to finish, how do you decide if you want to be advertising someone or sponsored by someone? How do you approach that? How do you work the deal? What are the things you need? Like, what are the necessities to that?
Yeah, so initially right out of the gate, we knew, well, for us, this is like kind of going back to the networking thing, right? Yeah. We knew every technology company in Midland. We knew every company that worked in the geologic side. And if you know anything about oil and gas, there's a shit ton of money in oil and gas.
Oh yeah.
Right. It's absurd. So our goal right away was like, okay, we need to monetize this, right? How are we going to approach it? And so initially we were doing these 30-second ad slots, and we were running ads for friends and family initially. So that's all we did. So like in our first 4 shows, we were running ads for like the accountant for the company. We were running ads for this person, that person, and then
were you charging?
No, we weren't charging, right? Because we wanted to fill those spots, so when people were listening, they would be like, "Oh, like there's like potential for us to get in here," and it kind of developed into we had a primary sponsor, and we were charging X amount, and for 5 shows, and the main reason for that for us was to get the equipment. Because we didn't want to pay out of our own pocket for our cameras, for our editing software, for our laptop, blah blah blah. So our initial goal right away was we wanted to go for the throat, and this is something that I think the host of the podcast, Troy, he has a knack for. He has a knack for talking to people, and he has a knack for convincing people to do things. Like he's a salesman that he doesn't even know, right? And so he would sell people on the podcast idea, and for this, like, whatever, was it a slot? Was it a primary sponsor? And then from there, we would leverage that to other companies.
So when you say a primary spot or primary sponsor and a spot, you say spot is like 30 seconds before the episode.
Yeah.
Primary sponsor is not 30 seconds before the episode.
Okay, so this is what it turned into, right? So we had, and it kind of actually happened as we developed the show. We have a conception segment, right? And our conception segment sponsors the beginning of every show, and that's our primary sponsor. So whenever you click on one of our videos, whatever our primary sponsor is, they're going to be in the very beginning of the episode. We're going to have our drill down sponsor, which is in the middle of the episode, and it's a 30-second to 1-minute slot of just a plug, right? And then we charge X amount for that. And then our completion segment sponsor, we have a sponsor for that. And that's how we approached it. And that's what it kind of developed into. And from there, it actually organically, and this is where things got really, really cool, is where, kind of like we were saying in the beginning of the episode, where we got to go to conferences. So we said, screw the 3 sponsor slots. We just want 1 sponsor for X amount of episodes or for X conference, right? And then they'll pay us to, publish the episodes through them. And then that's what we post on LinkedIn, blah, 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 blah.
Okay.
And they'll usually leverage it through their page as well, right? So they'll share the video, or they'll publish it on their page, and we'll publish it on our page. And, they'll, whatever analytics they get, they get the benefits of that.
Yeah.
So, or whatever new business they get.
So basically, instead of having like 4 ads in the beginning, you're like, hey, sponsor this show. In the beginning is like 2-minute ad of talking about this one sponsor, and then you do an episode that has nothing to do with them.
Yeah. So, I mean, everything will kind of part of the episode too, and this is kind of cool. Like for one sponsor we had, I'll give them a shout out, TGS. They have this service called Longbow, and Longbow is a well and production service. So you can tell every well in the country what that well has produced in the last month or in the past, and where the location of that well is. Just, that's super general. Like you can run a lot deeper dive things on it. The beginning of our episode will do that. And then with our guest, if they're like talking about, hey, like I was working at like ConocoPhillips, and I was in the this basin, and we're working on this well, we can be like, yo, let's pull it up. So on the show itself, we go into the software, pull up that well, and show it. Right.
Wow,
so
okay.
that's what the primary sponsor got. Right. So on the show, if we wanted to show any kind of well and production data, any kind of service that they offered, we tried to integrate it into the show, but it wouldn't be a sales pitch. It was more along the lines of like, yeah, this is a cool thing that we can do here.
Do you ever just like talk about them, like purposely bring them up when the chance comes?
No, we don't do that,
okay.
Right? Because that kind of takes away from the goal, right? Because if we try to do that, if it's like, oh, here's a window where we can plug our sponsor, it's like
you're just searching for it.
It turns into a sales pitch, and that's what we wanted to avoid from the start. And that was something that we got into at the live shows, and something that we were discussing, right? Because we wanted to avoid the sales pitch idea, right? Because we were running our podcast through someone else's booth, and we wanted to keep the authenticity through it. But at the same time, we needed to appease the people that paid us to go out there and run it through our booth. So that was kind of a conflict of interest thing. But we ended up figuring it out. But at the same time, it's definitely, it's been a blessing and a curse at the same time. I'll say that.
Interesting. So you like to get people on board, like one company on board for each for hey, I want to sponsor you for this month's of episode. Here's 5 episodes I want to sponsor you for. All right, at the beginning of each episode, we'll start with a different ad. I'll record it, and it'll be like record that. Now, when they say that you're going to charge them per ad.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it depends, right? If it's like a 5 episode thing, then we'll charge 5 up front, right? That I mean, that's just how it will be. But yeah, for the most part, most companies we charge per ad.
Per ad.
Yeah.
You ever have like a company like, hey, I'd like to buy 3 ads, but instead of paying you, I want to get your equipment, or I want to give you this instead. Like,
no.
Okay.
Yeah, we always ask for the money up front, and then we can do what we want with it.
Okay, that makes sense.
Right, and then sometimes we'll tell them though, because that actually I will say that's what got us our first deal done. We're like, hey, if you want to be the primary sponsor, we're going to buy camera equipment. We're going to buy X, Y, and Z. And then we'll integrate that into your sponsorship, right? Okay. So from there, like that definitely helped us sign the deal. But at the end of the day,
now are you signing contracts with these people?
Yeah.
Now 100%. Are you drawing up the contracts?
We have a lawyer that draws up all of our contracts.
So talk to me a little bit about the contract and how you approach these people. Like what do you know anything about that? Do you know much about?
Yeah, it's contract? A fucking nightmare, dude. It's initially it was because a lot of these companies, they have their internal like legal departments who have no idea anything about, audio recording, music, any of that. And we reached out to a lawyer specifically dealing in that in the audio, entertainment industry. So it's just it was a nice nightmare in the sense of they would send us edits back, and then we'd have to send them to our lawyer and be like, yo, does this make any sense? And he'd be like, yeah, no, they don't know what they're fucking talking about. And then we actually got in the hole early because of that. Like we were like thousands of dollars like in the red because like lawyer fees, like legal fees with like these different contracts that we were trying to put together. But luckily in the end we were able to turn it around. But there was a point where we actually were thinking about shutting down the podcast just because of like how gnarly things got.
Wow.
Yeah. But
so you definitely, it's not just something where you can go to like, hey, a local business, like, hey, I'd love to do an ad. You want to pay me $500 and I'll do a 2-minute ad. Yeah.
So what it started like that, right? But for the primary sponsor slots and like when things got a little bit more complex, we wanted to make sure there was no there was no room for error, right? Because that was the thing that we were worried about from the beginning, right? With people's reputations, with with these ads, because we don't want to be. Another issue we had was, all right, so this company, we're having this person from this company, right? They don't use this product, but we're promoting this product. Like, what issues can we run into there? What issues can we run into here? So
your contract had to like allow you to be able to do that.
Exactly, right? So if they wanted to say this fucking product sucks, they could say that. Like if we pulled up a product and they're like, it's not very good. Like, I've had these issues with it. We wanted them to be able to say that because that's authentic, right? Yeah. But a lot of the companies didn't want to allow the guests to say that. So
they need to know that they're paying for an advertisement, but it doesn't matter what you say in the episode.
Exactly.
Exactly. So that's you absolutely have to get contracts. Like, that's a huge thing.
Yeah. And so that was like initially when we were starting out the company, we spent more money in the legal side than we did in the actual like audio side.
Yeah, I'm about to begin that process. So.
Yeah. Yeah. I got your back, bro.
Send all the information.
I got your back, bro. It's a team effort here.
It's a team effort.
Yeah. There's no reason for you to go through those struggles like after we went through them because I don't wish that upon anyone. Like
how realistic is the idea of making this a career, like money-wise, monetary?
So that it's definitely something that we could do, but that's like not where my passions lie. So that's
obviously
the
for
issue.
you, but like someone like take me for example. Like obviously I have other
100%.
ventures.
You can definitely make a career out of this.
So like someone starting a podcast, like, hey, I'm gonna do this. Like this is very much something that can give you a nice, very good living.
Yeah.
If you do it right. All things said. But the advertising is and that's the other thing. I don't know if you've ever gotten this, but when I tell people I do a podcast, they like kind of giggle.
Yeah.
Like,
100%.
And like there's just no possible way to describe to someone how much it actually goes into doing this.
Yeah.
Especially at the quality, at the level you're doing it.
And that's kind of the funny thing too, because I've seen people attempt to start podcasts to like compete against ours, and they go 2-3 episodes in, and then they're
Falls
gone.
apart.
They fall apart, right? Because they don't realize the work that goes into
There's a
it,
tremendous amount.
Because
yeah.
I mean, it's like, as you know, it's super stressful, especially in the beginning, right? Like with any new company, right? At the end of the day, you're starting a brand new company, right? And I don't know what the statistics are, but I think it's like 90-something% of all companies in their first year don't make any money.
Yeah.
Right. So you're just taking it in the ass, right?
Yeah,
and you're
beating.
just like hoping, like, all right, I hope this turns around next year. I hope this turns around next year. And that's kind of demoralizing too, right? Because you're like, man, I'm losing a shit ton of money. I've invested so much already, and like I have these big like goals and dreams for this like product, and like, do I continue like taking it in the shorts, or do I continue investing, right?
Yeah.
Do I continue investing back into the business? And at the end of the day, I think that's probably it sucks, right? Because there's always that am I gonna fail, right? That thought in your head,
keeps
like,
you going. Like, you need to let that drive you.
Yeah, you're just like, well, yeah, exactly. So it's like, am I gonna fail? And being able to say, I mean, I'm pretty deep in the red, but I'm willing to invest in X, right? In the hopes that we're gonna get out of this, right?
Well, podcasting as well is it's not just like a business. It's not just something that you can do. It's not something that you just pick up. Like,
no,
anybody can do it, but anybody can pick up a guitar and take lessons. Like, if you're gonna commit, like if you're gonna make this a real thing, like, you have to like it. You have to be passionate about it. It has to be something that you truly like. You yearn for.
Yeah.
You have to love what you're doing, because I know everyone's doing it, but everyone knows the G chord.
Yeah.
But not everyone's fucking Hendrix. There's a lot in between.
I beg to differ. I am Jimi Hendrix.
there's a lot in between, but like you have to know, like, yeah, the first year, like, dude, I've been doing this since January. What are we in, October?
Yeah.
10 months I've been doing this. I haven't made a dime off this. I've spent probably close to 15 to 20 grand on this podcast so far. I haven't made a penny. Not even phased.
Yeah.
I believe in what I'm doing. I stand by it. But like, look, it's 10 months in. I'm fucking deeply invested, and I'm just now even thinking about because I'm working on building my own advertisements right now.
Yeah.
Advertising show, because it was just all about content and me figuring it out and doing what I love. I'm like, all right, let's go for it. Like, I'm making that leap. I knew I always was going to, but here I am starting. But it's like, yeah, it's gonna get a lot worse before it gets a lot better.
Yeah.
But like, you have to know that you have to be. You can't fake wanting this.
There's going to be growing pains, and that's the biggest issue that most people don't understand. Right? There's going to it's going to be tough. But at the end of the day, if you believe in your product, and I keep calling it a product just because
it is, yeah.
Because I mean, at the end of the day, right? It's something for people who log into whatever Spotify, iTunes, people that consume whatever information you're delivering to them, whatever they're consuming, right? That's the most important thing, right? And that only happens if you have a good product, right? Because you'll know immediately, right? If your guests are continually bad, or like, you're not getting recurring listeners, right? If you have a friend that's like, oh, I'll listen, right? And he comes back, and he comes back again, he comes back again. That's when you're like, oh wait, I might have something here, right?
And run then, with it, like,
exactly.
Don't give up on that. Don't take things lightly. Like, if you get that compliment, if something catches you off guard, like people are appreciating it, don't take that lightly.
Yeah.
Like, care about that. Care about what people say about what you're doing. And even if it's 1 or 2 people as opposed to the fucking 8 billion people in the world, those 1 or 2 people could be just enough to get you to push hard enough to go there.
Exactly.
But don't expect it to be easy at any point.
No.
Because I know it's hard. Like, I've been a musician my whole life. I'm used to people laughing at me when I tell them what I do.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you're a musician? Yeah. Okay. You're living a pipe dream.
Yeah.
Sure. Whatever. I do that. I'm best at it.
Yeah.
And then I create a podcast, like, oh, you run a podcast? Like, okay, what do you just sit down and talk to people? Like, and I say, like, I don't have time to hang out. Like, I can't meet up. I can't do this. What do you mean? Like, what do you, like, you don't have a quote unquote job.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, I don't have time. That's what I don't have for
Well,
you.
yeah, I don't work a 9 to 5. That's what you tell them. Like, okay, yeah, it's not a job in your perspective, right? And that's
So it's a lot harder than it seems. Like, if you want to do it for fun, go for it. If you want to do it so your buddies can listen to it, yeah, sure, go for it.
Yeah.
Anybody can do it. But I think, like I said, when I started, I wish there was something. I wish I listened to this episode.
Yeah. So. And I think, and like, exactly, it's just, I think those growing pains are the most important part about developing your podcast, right? Because it shows if you're actually truly invested or if you're just like one of those people, like you said, that just, I'm doing this for my friends. I'm just here to hang out.
Which is great. That's fine.
It's like I feel like I have something special here, and I feel like it's going to develop into something.
Absolutely.
That's the difference.
That's rock and roll.
That's muy rock and roll.
Muy rock and roll. Before we go, man, I ask all my guests this one. Do you have any advice? What would be like? I mean, obviously, this whole thing was fucking advice, technically, but like
theoretically,
I come to you and I say, "Hey, Matt, I'm starting a podcast tomorrow," and like you can tell me one or two things. What are the one or two things that you absolutely have to tell me?
What are you going to tell people?
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah. What is something that you're going to give to listeners, right? Ooh. What is something that they don't have that you can give them?
Fuck yeah.
Yeah.
Is that it? Just straight up?
Just straight up, right? Just at the end of the day, it's like, what is something that's thought-provoking and what is something that they're lacking that you can give them, right?
Yeah.
What is a perspective that you have?
Fuck yeah.
Yeah. That's
rock and roll, man.
Rock and roll.
Matthew Scipione.
Oh, hey, Jiros.
Be sure to check out his podcast. What's it called?
The Permian Basin Experience. If you're into rocks, I doubt the majority of you are into rocks, but if you're into rocks, you're into oil and gas, and you're
thought-provoking.
Yeah. Into people who are just like been doing this their whole life, and
Yeah. I'll be sure to tag them on the Instagram and social media posts, so be sure to check them out there. And
game on. And then we're going to do this again in Tucson.
Absolutely.
In the Dirty Tea.
I'm coming to Tucson. I'm going to be on your episode, then I'm bringing my mobile setup. We're going to do another one. I'm going to have all three of you on.
Dude, it's going to be beautiful.
It's going to be beautiful. All right, man. Peace out.
Peace out.
Slow clap.
Slow clap.